So often people have asked over the years, what's your specialty? And I said, my specialty is having no specialty, because it enables you to really think very creatively in different areas. And I would imagine the things that you did at Taco Bell versus Hershey versus Visa versus the Los Angeles Rams, like, you've brought so many different ways of thinking and practices or processes or nuances from a brand perspective in terms of understanding the psychology of a consumer or the B2B piece or the retail piece. I would imagine that had a huge impact on each of these positions that you had.
Yeah, it was interesting because each time I would jump into a new vertical, I would naturally challenge the status quo, and not to be a contrarian for contrarian's sake, but rather because I came in completely from a different perspective. And so my frame of reference or starting point was always in a different place. And so coming into a new organization, there was this sweet spot where you just see things differently all the time. And then finding the balance and the connectivity with the organization and how they see things. And when you hit that Venn diagram, if you will, where the two converge, that's where the magic happens, right? Because then you're able to unlock for the organization not only a whole new way of doing things or thinking about things or bringing things to life, but in a way that connects to the DNA of the organization. Yeah. And I think that's where the power lies. Sometimes I think there's elements of being an entrepreneur that is easier. It's very hard. Don't get me wrong. I'm not simplifying that, but there are elements of it being easier in that you could do just about anything, right? Because there are no rules. And then on the flip side, from a large scale global company, there's elements that are easier because there are so many rules. Like, it's almost like this is the way. Yeah. And so the hard part is actually bridging the two and finding the unlock where the two converge.
So what would be some of the aha moments in your life, in your career trajectory? And certainly if you want to share any personal kind of moments where, sometimes it's like I picked up the family and we moved to the other side of the country. It might have been when we had kids. I mean, we all have different aha moments, and some we hear in ourselves and some we don't, some we ignore, and we have them, but then we just go about our business, which I think the reinvention conversation is such a big, that really sits at the center of it, is, do we choose to pivot in those moments? What's that inflection point in our lives? Are there any that really stand out to you that were moments where you said, this is going to be game changing for me personally or career wise?
Lots of them. It's interesting because my husband and I actually every year we'll get together and look at the next 2 years. And we'll say, what do we want out of the next 2 years? And then we'll go back and we'll do a look back and say, have we achieved what we wanted to get out of it? Do we need to pivot how we look ahead? Given our circumstances, given what's happening in the world, given what's happening at work. And in every time that we do this, we have this moment that says, is this a time to pivot, to take a chance, to do something different, to reevaluate, to say if what was meeting our needs personally and professionally are still doing that.
Right.
And the choices that I've made in life have always been a convergence of what's happening professionally and personally. There was a moment where I did take a chance, and I'm so happy I did. I was at Visa in the Bay Area in Northern California, which got really expensive. I was having my third child, and I got a call from a recruiter, and it was for the Hershey Company. And I remember originally I was like, I'm not moving to Hershey, Pennsylvania. Like, what are you talking about? And my husband was like, hey, I grew up in a small town. This could be a really great opportunity for us and give us a whole different life and perspective. And so I had my child, and I was like, you know what? Sure, let's take this call. Let's have this conversation. One thing led to another, and very quickly we found ourselves in Hershey, Pennsylvania.
Wow.
And it was one of the best moves I ever made. I thought, okay, I'm going to do this for a couple of years. We'll see, and then we'll see what's next. We actually came to love it. My children to this day, we're back in Los Angeles, still say, Mommy, when are we going back to Hershey?
Yeah, I was going to say, now they're at an age where they can really appreciate what that was about. How long did you spend there?
I spent 3 years there and was intending to stay much longer because, I always said it was a little slice of Americana in the best way possible. And it was really good for our family. So talk about personal and professional. Yeah. And professionally, I was thriving. It was great. And then I got a call, and totally not ready to move. But I got the call from the Los Angeles Rams. And I remember taking that call. And the person who called me is a recruiter who knew me. And he said, so how do you feel about football? And I'm very transparent and I'm very honest.
You're like, what's that?
And pretty much, because my exact answer was, I don't. Why?
I don't feel a lot right for it.
I didn't grow up a football fan. But the opportunity to build the brand from the ground up, to disrupt the industry and build a brand-centered organization, to be able to go back to Los Angeles, where I grew up, and my parents were getting older, was one of those moments where you said, okay, let's do this. Let's reinvent ourselves. Let's do this.
Love it.
And you kind of go with it. So sometimes it's planned, like when my husband and I sit down on an annual basis, and sometimes you got to be ready for the unplanned.
And I love that. I sort of just got chills when you said that. And, I have these conversations every day with people, but I so love that you've allowed yourselves, both individually and as a couple and as a family, to lean into those moments. And I think the things that your children are learning from you is extraordinary. And I grew up in a family where we moved around a lot. My parents, there was no box. There was, there just was never a box in our world. And so I so appreciate that what you are giving your kids is the gift of what I feel my parents gave me, which was that ability to say yes to things, that ability to be wide-eyed and curious and explore. It doesn't mean you're going to say yes to everything, but that you're so open to it and so receptive to the adventure. And for me, change is adventure. Mm-hmm. For a lot of people, it's fearful. And understandably, it can be very unnerving and getting out of your comfort zone can not be easy for a lot of people. But I think that's really special. Would you say that there are any moments like that you sort of regretted, that you thought, you know what, this was not the right move for us and we shouldn't have done it? And, you come full circle, but, where you sort of in the moment felt that maybe it wasn't right?
Not in that way. I would say throughout every choice we've made, there are things where, man, I wish it wasn't that way. But in the end, there's no regrets because we were able to learn from them.
Yeah.
We created memories from them. We grew from them. Like, there was so much to be gained from every choice that we've made.
Right.
And I think it's about how you look at it.
Yeah.
Right?
And yes.
Because we are shaped and who we are is based on the experiences that we've had, good, bad, and otherwise, right? And so for me to regret is like regretting who I am today. That's just not something
not who you
I'd ever
are.
Do. Yeah.
No, and I love what you said, Ronalee, about the reframing, that very often with these moments in life, it is about reframing. It's putting on a pair of rose-colored glasses, if only for a moment, and saying, if I could see it this way, It may not be who I am, but what if I chose to try to see it this way and learn from it or grow from it or experience it in a way that maybe I can interpret it differently? Is that possible? And for some people, that's more challenging than it is for others. But it's a word reframe that I use often in these conversations about failure. It's never failure. It's an opportunity to grow, to learn, to pivot, to take another road that we only know what we know in the moment. It's when we turn the corner and there's a surprise and we didn't know to expect that new things come into our lives that we get to experience, right?